What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Stocks with Mike and Tom show. We have an amazing episode for everyone today. The S&P 500 is super close to all-time highs. We have important CPI data tomorrow, and overall, in today's video, we're going to be going over the best plays to watch for tomorrow. So make sure you stick around to the end, and at the end of tonight's video, we have a $6.7 million options trade that expires this Friday. So make sure to stick around to the end. But Tom, what happened in the market today?
Yeah, the market today ended up being kind of flat to slightly down on the SPY. And like all week long, ever since Monday, we've just consolidated and have just been flat around these highs around 423.38, 423.50-ish area. And we just failed to break out every single day. On the 5-minute chart here, we're sitting on the 1,000 SMA to end the day. And the SPY ended up kind of tanking down at close, not necessarily tanking down, but just coming down a little bit on some inflation fear that's going to be coming out tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, we're going to have CPI data coming out, and it's going to show how inflation is going and how it's going to move the markets in either a negative or a positive way. And we saw the SPY, like I said, close red today in anticipation of the event. But even though it closed red today, if the numbers aren't terrible, the market could still go up. And keep in mind that high inflation is kind of expected right now. So for the markets to fall, it's probably going to have to at least hit the estimate of 4.7% or higher to make the market go up. And I have a chart I'm going to pull up right here for you guys. And you guys can really see how this inflation is starting to jump. You know, whenever we were going down during COVID, we were in a little bit of a deflationary period to try to get the market, back up. And the thing is that generally we see a super high inflation, and then the inflation normally goes down into a deflationary period. So for right now, the inflation is super high at 4.2%. And when this data comes out tomorrow, they're expecting, like I said, 4.7%. And the thing is that if we don't hit 4.7%, which is the expectation, I think the market might still go up, even though we're seeing the SPY go down today. And it's just one of those things where it's kind of expected. And we can see the CPI data here on this chart, how it's at 266.832. CPI data can get a little confusing, so go ahead and look it up if you guys don't understand it. But the inflation rate is a lot easier to understand at 4.7%. So I think if we're at 4.7% or higher, it might make the market go down. But there's definitely a lot of conflict here. Some people think it's going to go up. Some people think it's going to go down. So overall, I think it's just going to depend on what the data comes out with, and if it's going to be worse than expectations or not. Almost like what we see with earnings sometimes, how if earnings are expected to be bad, then if they're not too bad, then sometimes the stock still goes up. So we might still see the SPY pop up if it's not terrible.
Good stuff, Tom. And then the top stock I would say to watch out for this catalyst, besides the SPY, would be TLT. Normally when rates rise, TLT falls. And then when rates fall, TLT rises. Whenever we see large movement with rates, TLT almost always has some pretty big movement, and there's almost always opportunity with this ETF. So let's keep an eye on that one. And then Tom, I know that we have hype stocks going crazy right now. AMC, GameStop, Wish, SNDL, CLOV, and even Wendy's. What's going on there?
Yeah, today was not a good day for the hype stocks. We saw a lot of them actually down. AMC was red, GME slightly green, but you can see at the end of the day, it really tanked off. GME actually had earnings here in after hours and ended up posting slightly better than expected, but still ended up going down. And then we have Wish, which actually exploded yesterday, just tanked off today as well. What did do pretty well though was SNDL early on, but then once again at the end of the day, they're also down. A lot of people were saying the CLOV is controlled by a lot of the institutions and a lot of the hedge funds, and that they might have sold a lot of their position, which made it go down as well. And then we had Wendy's pop up yesterday, which also tanked off. So today was just a very bad day for these hype stocks, unfortunately. But the good news is that the main ones like AMC, for example, they're still holding like their $40 support. And even though they were down 10% relative to the moves that we've been seeing, that's not very much. So I think that there's still a chance for some of these to go up. But with all the inflation fears and stuff, I think that there's going to be a lot of movement with this right now. And I just think the main thing is, like, I would honestly just look at AMC and treat it as a momentum play and try to make it really move up above $60. I was watching that all week long. while you were gone, Mike, and it just failed to break out above that. And I would just say watch for $60 tomorrow, because if we don't see it come up and we actually start to tank and fall down below 40, then you might just have to adjust your strategy to the downside, but hopefully it can hold that $40 support and start to go up. And the good news is that AMC doesn't really move with the market. So if the SPY is parabolic tomorrow with that inflation news, AMC might be going up all on its own, which is a pretty good deal.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you said, AMC doesn't really move with the market. And when we're in situations where we have the SPY just lingering around all time highs right now, and it's kind of really choppy actually, now's the time to go into those stocks that kind of just do whatever they want. Hype stocks are kind of in that category, but also a lot of the MJ stocks are like Tilray, CGC, CRON, and just stocks like that. And then even sometimes these China stocks are like that. But while we're on the topic of China, I heard that there's some pretty big news regarding them right now.
Yeah, the Pentagon is saying, or CNBC reports, I should say, that the Pentagon makes China its top policy priority with several new classified programs. And Austin's directive comes as the Biden administration and lawmakers in both parties, so both political parties are pretty much saying this, they're going to be ramping up their initiatives to counter China's international ambitions, from economic and trade policy to security concerns. And the classified Pentagon-wide directive comes on the heels of recommendations from a 23-member task force aimed at assessing the U.S. military's China strategy. And you know what? We actually saw Chinese stocks really come down this week. And I'm sure, I don't know if people knew what was going to happen or not, but BABA's starting to really sell off here. It's not looking too good. And, you know, there's a lot of other Chinese stocks as well, but it's always bad news to hear that the United States and China are kind of getting off on the wrong foot right now. And that's always a bad thing. You know, we saw, if I go to a SPY max daily chart here, if we go back to 2018, back whenever we saw the SPY really start to tank off whenever Trump was having problems with China, you can see the SPY kind of went from 293 all the way down to 236 with a huge drop over those few months. And man, it's just one of those bad situations where with this inflation data, now we have China, bad news with China coming out too. So it's just not a good thing right now for the overall market. But yeah, anything with China can just be pretty bad. So just have your eyes out, because there could be like a black swan event, or China might come out and make a statement, or anything can happen. So just have your eyes peeled.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into our member of the day. Today's member of the day is a YouTube commenter, Nicholas E, saying, "You guys are absolutely awesome. I watch your videos every night. The growth potential of this channel is crazy. Great work, and thank you." Well, thank you so much, Nicholas, for that awesome, positive comment. Tom and I really appreciate it. But now let's get right into our momentum plays for tomorrow. And with the first one, we have Square to the downside.
Yeah, this is pretty unfortunate to see, but it's right at it, the 210 support. So make it break below 210. And if it does, I think it'll be a pretty big move.
All right. And then with the next one, we have Boeing also to the downside.
Yep, with Boeing, go ahead and make them fall below 247 even.
All right. And then with the last one, we have X, but to the upside.
Yeah, US Steel actually doing very well. Make them just break the high of day around 27.77.
Sounds good. So we're eyeing these potential plays tomorrow for potential day trades. For Square and Boeing, we're eyeing them potentially to the downside, only if they break below the levels Tom listed. And for X, we are eyeing that potentially to the upside, only if it breaks above the level Tom listed. But now let's get right into the $6.1 million options trade for this Friday. We are looking at the Workhorse 20 strike calls. Like I said, for this Friday, there was around $6.1 million put into these options today. I'm going to have to say that they are shorting these calls, Tom, and I really think that they're just covered calls. And my main reason for that is because of how far out of the money these options are. They're around like you could say like over $3 out of the money on a $17 stock, which is a pretty good amount, especially for an option that expires in a couple days. Overall, I think the setup looks really solid. I think it's awesome how it's bouncing really well off that $10 support. So I like the setup, but for this specific option, I'm going to have to say that they're shorting them.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. It really looks like that. And $20 is a huge resistance as well. So for it to break through there, it would have to have a lot of momentum. So I think that they're shorting it as well. And it's just one of those plays where it's $6 million 2 days away. So you guys ask yourself the question, would you bet $6 million that Workhorse is going to fly up to 20 tomorrow? I mean, I bet some people would, but in the end, I wouldn't do that. And it's just one of those weird situations where with it being on resistance and everything, I think that they're going to be shorting it as well.
For sure. And then I just analyzed this specific option, and there's around an 80% chance that this option expires worthless on Friday by close. So, the odds definitely aren't in the favor if they are longing it. That's why I definitely think it's like a covered call, or even like a naked call, like they're writing the call. So, we'll see what happens, and we'll check back in on them later in the week. But now let's get right into the questions from the previous episode. And with the first question, we have Ray saying, can you guys check Wish and Intel? So let's take a look at Wish first. They had an amazing day yesterday, like Tom said, but they really pulled back today. They're down around 9% today, but they gapped up. Tom, what are you thinking about this one? I know we're getting really close to that $10 support, which seems to be a pretty strong level. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it might have a little bit of an intraday bounce there tomorrow. Honestly, I think it's just going to depend on what the overall sentiment of the market is. I think that if we see like a lot of the meme stocks, kind of like AMC, GME, Sundial, CLOV, if we start seeing all those popping up tomorrow, I think we might see Wish kind of follow suit as well. But man, with that huge rise we had and the big drop we had today, it's definitely scary to see. And I was kind of hoping that they would hold around that like $11 support, and they fell below it. So yeah, like you said, hopefully they can hold the $10 for tomorrow, or else it's not going to be looking good. And honestly, it's one of those trades that I personally wouldn't take, but it looks like a very high risk, high reward play. So if it does work out, it could definitely pay a lot of dividends.
All right. And then he was also asking about Intel. So this stock has been struggling a little bit over like the past year or so. They are like a solid company, but they've just had some negative catalysts that kind of pushed them lower. They're right around that like 56 support level, which is good. I'm definitely not like bearish on them, but at the same time, like I'm not a huge fan of this company. I like stocks like DraftKings, Enphase, and Redfin, and even Neo a lot more, like for holding shares. For a short-term trade, Intel isn't bad. It's not really doing anything. So it's not a bad setup. It's definitely not a bad setup. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, for the short term, I think anything can happen with it. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on in the semiconductor world right now, like people having to pay more on their contracts for DRAM, I heard came out today. I don't know if you saw this, Mike. I know you were gone, but look at MU actually over the past couple of days, and look at how much this stock got destroyed. It was actually a pretty bad move. And this has to do with like the chip shortages and just all the rising costs that are going on. So I'm wondering if that could hurt Intel in the short term. But personally, I'm a big Intel fan and I love them for the long term. I think AMD might be able to do a little bit better than them, and Nvidia, but I do love Intel. I think it'll eventually kind of fill the gap and maybe break out up above $70. But I think it's definitely going to take a long time. And especially like if we see inflation start to go up through the roof, it's going to make it take even longer.
And then check out Nvidia, Tom. They're still lingering right around their all-time high, even though the market is a little shaky right now. And I think that's an awesome sign. Don't forget that they do have that stock split pretty soon, which was a really good catalyst for Tesla and Apple just a couple months ago. But definitely keep Nvidia on your radar. But I know you brought up MU. Check out the semiconductor ETF. SMH. They've been lingering around like that 250 area for like a couple months now. What do you think about like just the semiconductor space in general?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just one of those situations where with everything going on and the rising costs and stuff, personally, I could see this whole sector kind of going to the downside. It's an unfortunate thing for me to have to say. I don't want to say it, but it's just what I'm looking at on the chart here. I think that we're seeing a lot of resistance areas on a lot of these stocks, and with everything going on, like the chip shortages and all of that, it's hurting these companies, I think, and it's making costs just go through the roof. Obviously, Nvidia is still doing very well, but they're a totally different animal. They're the king of graphics cards. So, but a lot of these other companies are actually having a little bit of problems, and I would just wouldn't be surprised until that whole sector kind of evens itself out and these costs kind of get back to normal, then I think that this will kind of just stay in the range. It's been trading between like 220 and 260 for the past few months. And I would just kind of expect it to maybe come back down to that lower level, maybe around 220 again, and then start to fly back up from there. But it's just going to depend on what happens with the overall semiconductor sector, I think.
For sure. I definitely asked you a pretty hard question right there, but I can definitely see it falling too in the short term, but for the long term, I am a really big fan of this industry. So Tom, do you have any last minute stocks or options or like anything you're watching out for tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at a lot of these healthcare stocks. Like I'm looking at like mRNA, for example, like Moderna. Some of these have like a lot of volume coming into them over like the past week. Not a ton, but at least they're having a ton of movement. And for example, Moderna is starting to look pretty overextended. And on the 15-minute chart, like I said, it's getting overextended, so it could start to fall. But we're still like right around those all-time highs. If we start to break out like above 227.70 or something like that, I think it could be great. And then also we have that inflation data coming out tomorrow. So I'm really looking at the SPY, of course. I'm going to be watching this like a hawk to see if it continues to the downside. I think if it starts to fall below the 420 support, we're going to see a humongous sell-off out of it. So really watch for 420 tomorrow. I think if we can hold that, and if the inflation data isn't the worst, then I think the market can kind of hold itself up and do well. But if it starts going down, definitely look at the SPY or maybe go look at VXX calls because VXX might start popping up as well.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments down below and come join Tom and I live at Market Open on the new Stocked Up Live channel. The link will be in the description down below. If you want to trade with Tom and I every single day, plus get access to our bots, you can click the first link in the description down below for about $40 off. But other than that, thanks for watching.